Hey, friends, welcome back to the Overflow podcast, a woman's roundtable. I'm your host, Becky Webb, and then I'm here with my co hosts, Andrea Lehman and Bronwyn Deiter. And today we're going to talk about a really important episode that's really close to our hearts. We're talking about parenting during puberty and specifically your girls, parenting your girls. And so we want to talk a little bit about what it looks like to support an adolescent girl through those physical changes, emotional changes, all those things that come with from, growing up, starting your cycle, all that stuff. And I think puberty is really a street season that stretches us as moms, not just because our daughters are changing, but because we have to grow and shift with them. And we have all these mood swings, we have body changes, we have hormones, and let's be honest, like sometimes it can be very testing, but I think it's also a really sacred time with our girls. This is a really amazing opportunity to teach them body awareness, emotional resilience, and just really to model what it looks like to live from a place of overflow for them too. So even though it gets a little messy in the middle, we want to share our own personal stories about our families, ways to help support their hormone health, their emotional stability during puberty, and really how to nurture this connection with your girls. So just grab a drink, grab a cup of coffee, take a deep breath, and we're excited you're here. So let's talk a little bit about your guys' experience. Like Andrea and Bronwyn, what kind of experience did you have growing up when, you started getting close to puberty or when you went through puberty as far as like interactions with your parents or the talk or whatever comes to mind?
It's interesting. There's a couple things that come up for me as we were thinking about doing this episode. Um, my my first recollection was being at our family being at our favorite Mexican food restaurant one evening. And it must have, I don't know, it must have been like building up all day for me. And suddenly I was like, Mom, I need you to come to the bathroom with me. And I take her into the bathroom and I'm like, Mom, I think I have cancer. And she's like, what? And I was like, feel my boob. And it was like the beginning of a breast bud. I had no idea because we hadn't had that conversation. And I literally all day had been concerned that I had cancer. So I mean, I think that's first tip, moms. Let's talk to our kids about getting breast buds. So that was my first recollection. And then I think the other thing that was really significant for me and that was hard for me was my mom was very open. Like it wasn't nothing, she wasn't embarrassed about anything. She was a nurse, like she wasn't embarrassed about anything. But I think just kind of that generation, like there wasn't a whole lot of intentional conversations about everything that would happen with your body and that kind of thing. And so I just remember for years, like feeling really, really low all of a sudden and not knowing why and feeling like, what is wrong with me? Like, why do I feel this way? And not relating it to, like the hormonal fluctuations and just really not understanding it. And so, yeah, those were kind of two things that stood out for me. And even in seventh grade, I had a very, very hard year. Like, all of friends like fighting. It was just, I was coming home in seventh grade, like probably twice a week crying because there was something with friends and it was just a hard time. But I know, I started my period in eighth grade. So I know like I was in those early stages of puberty and it was all of the hormonal fluctuations, right? So, um, yeah, I've learned a lot, I think, from those experiences about how I wanted to do things differently, as I raised my daughter. Bronwyn, what about you?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to think back to that age because it's such a turning point for going from a kid brain to an adult brain. And it's really the hormones acting on our psyche changes a person, right? But it's kind of rough going through it. And I remember I'm the second daughter. I have a sister who's older than me. She's 14 months older. So she's not that much older than I am. And then we had all of our friends, and my mom did talk to us about having periods. Like we kind of understood, I understood that. And also, I think most of my information I was getting from my friends because it wasn't the kind of thing where I was going to talk to her first. And I think as I became a parent, I realized like I want to start having these conversations more openly and more just like casually here and there, not like, okay, we're going to have this talk about what periods are, but just like all the time. So even so my boys can hear us be like, oh, I'm starting my period today, so that it's really normalized. Um, and and also so that I can be the one giving most of the information to my girls because they can be getting misinformation if they're getting it from friends and I just want to have that open dialogue where we have so I've had that as a goal in parenting. But for me, I remember the main feeling I had was that I was behind and that like all my friends were getting bras before I was, they were all getting their periods before I was. And it was something that I so much wanted. It was like this FOMO thing before we even knew the term FOMO, right? And then looking back, it's like, oh, the foolishness, right? Like everybody will develop and they'll develop in their own time. We don't want to rush anything. And that's actually one of the things we're going to talk about today, right? That we don't want actually outside disruptors coming in and starting to like hurry up this process. We want each woman to develop in her own time frame and naturally and as healthy as possible. So just kind of fast forward, when I became mom, I think a good portion of it is a lot about the preparing mentally and emotionally for that, and just affirming my daughters that they are who they are because God made them this way, and that they're perfect. They have their own time frame, and they may have a friend who starts her period 3 years before you do, and that's okay. Or a friend who starts her period 3 years later, that's okay. There's a kind of a range of when puberty begins. And just like for our listeners, specifically, puberty begins the day you start your first period. But we know that things start ramping up before that, like breast buds, right? Breasts start developing because because estrogen starts rising, months before, maybe even years before your period starts, and that has an effect on every cell in the body. It's not just breasts that respond to that, but the uterus, the breasts, and then the mind does as well. And so girls begin to become more mature, and that's a great thing. Um, yeah, so it's an exciting time to be a mom and watch your daughter bloom. And I think that's one thing, we're here mostly talking to other moms, and I just think if you feel like fear and trepidation around that, I think it might be good for you to do a little exercise and think about what it was in your story that makes you nervous and how you can change that story for your next generation. And then think of it as you're getting to watch your daughter bloom into a woman, right? With the anticipation that she'll be one of your best friends for life as a woman. So anyway, yeah, that's my. So also, here was another goal that I had. I was 13 and 3 months old when my period began. And in terms of my daughters, I hoped that they would be a little bit older than I had been when I started my period. And that has been the case. So that's pretty cool. And the reason I say that is because we know that in our current day, we're exposed to so many xenoestrogens that puberty is sometimes like they call it, what is the term for it?
Onset puberty, or there's another term for it.
Precocious, right? Precocious
Yeah,
puberty,
precocious puberty.
which means like too early. And so I was, attempting and trying and hoping that by avoiding a lot of these exposures in our home, that we could at least get beyond the age that I had been, because I was exposed to some xenoestrogens. We weren't totally aware of that. So, and that's been the case. So I feel like it's a real win when most people are seeing each generation begin earlier and earlier and earlier. So yeah, those are.
How about you, Becky? What was your
So
experience?
I just remember, for one, those same kind of like up and down emotions, like through middle school. Like I feel like middle school and high school was very difficult for me because I was so like up and down with emotions. And so thinking back, I'm like, yeah, I wish I would have had more education on that to understand that part of me at that age. Like I feel like it wouldn't make you feel so out of place sometimes. I mean, middle school is kind of an awkward age. I mean, and then even into high school, it's like if you're so up and down on your emotions, I think it can be easier to handle if you understand that it's really a part of your cycle, right? Like that's it's part of being a woman, and that there's ways to support that in the body. And so, I mean, I remember my mom kind of had the talk with me, and I remember her sitting down, and I remember being in my room and her being like, okay, I need to talk to you about something. And when she started talking, I just remember feeling so incredibly uncomfortable. And I remember like putting a pillow over my face because I think I was either afraid I was going to laugh or cry. Like I didn't know. And so I've thought about that to bring that forward with my kids. And I'm like, I just want to foster this relationship where they feel free asking me questions. Like it's not taboo. Like it's so, it's great. And that's something that I've really enjoyed with my girls is that, Piper's 13, Baylor's 15. And so Baylor started her cycle now and Piper hasn't yet. But every time, I've always been still a little nervous about bringing up all the details, right, of talking to them. But it's so good because they seem like they just feel like they have so much freedom to ask me random questions. And I love that because I never felt like I had that with my mom. And as much as I think my mom tried, I never felt that comfortable. And so I think it's very freeing to be able to have that kind of relationship with your children that they can just ask you, and I've even kind of like set the stage a little bit, like, when you get older and you're ready to get, engaged and married someday, like we'll talk about this more, in depth. Like there's more things we can talk about. And so I love having that opportunity with them.
And I think the earlier you start, the better, right?
Yeah.
I know with Bennett, we were recommended the book, The Care and Keeping of You. It's an American Girl doll book. And I will give the caveat that I don't agree with every little thing in the book, but it's very good overall. And Bennett loved it. And we just had great conversations with it. And we started that when she was probably 8, I would say. And it talks about your breasts, and it talks about like underarm like BO and how to, care for yourself there. And it talks about getting pubic hair. She like ate it all up. She was love. Can we read that book again? Can we read that book again? So I think just having those conversations, early and just letting them see you do the things. Like actually both of my kids, and we talked about this on another episode, both of my kids would like be in the bathroom when I was putting in a tampon. Like they saw the thing. So everything was like very natural when they were really little. And so, and kind of like you, Bronwyn, as my son has gotten older, we haven't shied away from like talking about menstrual cramps and about me being on my period and those things. And he's not weird about it because he's kind of, like as a small child, like seeing all of the stuff and then like heard us talking about it as he got older. And I think that's really healthy and, important for guys too, right? They're going to be married to a woman for the rest of their life and then have girls themselves for them to be really just comfortable with the topic, I think is important.
Yeah, I love that. We also I got him to know like this is a faith-based like Christian book series. There's 4 books. Carolyn Nystrom is the name of the author. And like you can literally read them
Read the titles for those who are listening.
Before I Was Born. I think that's book 2. The Story of Me. So you can literally start, they have ages on here. So this is age 3 to 5. The Story of Me. Another mom told me about this and it was great. This one is God's Design for Sex, and it's like 5 to 8, and all the content is like totally age appropriate. So it's not like but it's like kind of prepares them for like what's coming. And then book 3 says 8 to 11, and it's called What's the Big Deal? I think you can buy all these books together. I can't remember,
Awesome.
but and then this is the last one, Facing the Facts, age 11 to 14. And so it's all faith-based, like covers all the topics. I just thought it was really helpful for me as a parent. And then especially like the younger books you can like read to the kids. It was good and helpful.
Love that.
Yeah, kind of sets the stage. So let's talk about a little more. Bronwyn kind of touched on this, but how to know puberty is starting. Like, what would you guys say?
So there's something, if you're you may or may not be familiar with this, but there's something called the Tanner scale, and it really breaks puberty up into 5 different stages. So we'll see if I can do this by memory. But the first stage is, and it's looking at breast development and it's looking at pubic hair. So the first stage, there's no breast development at all. There's no pubic hair. Okay, so it doesn't mean that there's not things happening, right? There can be things happening, but visually nothing is showing yet. Stage two, and they can kind of be separate. So breast development might start first, or they may start getting pubic hair first. I know my daughter started getting armpit hair, before anything, and that was
Oh,
kind of our
mine
first
too.
indication. Yeah.
How old was
And that
she?
was that was actually pretty early. Like
Mine
that
was
was 8, I want to say 8 or 9 years old. She had
okay.
like two little straggly
I
like
know. I'm
hairs. And I
kind
was
of
like,
glad to hear
what?
that because I was talking to another mom and she's like, well, my doctor said when they start getting arm hair, they're about to start their period. I'm like,
Nope.
kids started at like 8 or 9 or 10 or something, had arm hair, and she's not started her cycle yet, and she's 13. So,
Well, and I think that's an important caveat too, is that some people go through these 5 stages within a year to two. And some girls are going to be more like 4, 5 years, going through all of the stages. And that's actually where my daughter is at because she's 13 and a half right now and still hasn't started her cycle. All of the signs are there. Like I'm expecting it literally any second. But anyway, so stage two, they start getting the breast buds and they will have like minimal pubic hair, but it's going to be like not dark.
Mhm.
It can be kind of long and stringy, not like curled. So that's going to
Softer.
be
Soft.
it's going to be softer, not coarse. And then stage three, there's going to be a little bit more breast development. The areola is going to be changing, and then just more pubic hair. And then stage four is actually when menses begins. So stage four, their breasts are going to look a little bit more like they are going to as an adult. And then they start their cycle during that time. And then, pubic hair is just more. Stage five is when their breasts are fully developed, like they're going to be as an adult. And then that pubic hair may, like you may see a little bit on the thighs and things like that. It's like when it's fully formed. So 5 stages, so you can kind of see, and you can have these conversations with your daughter too. Like, here's the stages. Where do you think you're at right now? Based on this, where do you think you are? The other thing that is going to happen most likely before they start is they're going to start to get discharged. So that's another conversation to have with them. 6 to 12 months before they start, they might, start seeing discharge in their underwear so that they don't freak out like what's going on. I think that's an important conversation to have as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that can be scary, just like thinking you have cancer, right? Like, what's going on? I must be sick, right?
Mhm.
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 Instead of, this is normal. And also just understanding this is a time for, moms to be kind of going back and understanding all of these phases of our cycle too, in that we tend to have more discharge mid-cycle and then we have a period. So it's kind of like day one, you have your period, day 14, you have your ovulation discharge on the average. And not everybody has a 28-day cycle, right? Even as a fully developed woman, but certainly girls have inconsistent cycles. And this kind of can happen all the way through your teen years or not. But it can happen with inconsistent cycles because estrogen's rising. And so you have like kind of these flares of high estrogen, which will create more discharge, possibly create breast tenderness, and just speed on the whole development through the teen years. But it's interesting that along with all of our physical changes, there's emotional changes, emotional cycling, right? Because we have times as adults, we can connect into that. Oh, during my ovulation time, I feel more sociable, better, more verbal ideas, more energy. And then during the luteal phase, up to the period, a little bit like longer energy, like long run energy, but not like height of energy, less verbal, less social. And so if we begin to connect as moms, if we connect with our own cycle of emotional changes, we can help our daughter recognize that as well. So, but we can also sometimes recognize it in our daughter months before she actually begins her period. We can say, oh, she's cycling.
Well, and I think when it's important to know that when those hormones are kind of onboarding, they're kind of like they're kind of practicing, right, for
Mhm.
that cycle to begin. And so things can be really volatile, even like, day to day, for your child. And so I think those conversations are so important that like you might have big feelings or you might be, feeling just kind of down, all of the sudden.
Hmm.
And that's totally normal and it's okay for you to be feeling that way. And I've been able to for Bennett to relate it back to me. Like like there's times in the month, right, where I seem a little bit snappy or you're like, what's going on with mom? It's because I'm at a certain time in my cycle, right? And so I do feel a little bit more short-tempered and things may get to me a little bit more easy. And so just helping them to be aware of what they're feeling and that that's all normal and part
And
of
those
the process.
conversations I feel like are so beneficial for just mental health, like setting them up for better mental health in their future. Because our society, I think, doesn't really normalize these conversations. And so when we're having them with our kids, and even when maybe they're irritating us a little bit or something like that, just like, yeah, having those open conversations so we understand that these emotions do come along with our cycles, right?
Hmm.
And then we also, I think, come to understand too, where maybe we need more support with some
Yeah.
supplements or something else, like realizing, oh, like I'm feeling this way. Maybe I need a little extra support, or my daughter needs a little extra support. And just to keep that, as the forefront of our mind to be thinking about it.
Mhm.
You
Hmm.
gonna say something else, Andrea?
No, I was just thinking, let's talk support.
Yeah.
Well,
So, well, let's talk for before we get to support, let's talk a little bit more about like xenoestrogens and like what they are, where they come from, all that. Bronwyn, you want to just like kind of start us off with that?
yeah. Well, xenoestrogens are something that's like I tell my girls it's like a Frankenstein version of estrogen. It's like looks like, but is
That's
really
good.
not. And
Mhm.
also it's a monster. Some of our xenoestrogens are like 100 times as powerful as human estrogen and stick into our own estrogen receptors. So xenoestrogens are things that are man-made and that look like estrogen to our bodies and turn on our receptor sites and would basically stimulate like estrogen would, but could continue to stimulate to a greater degree or for much, much longer and not go through the normal process of being cleared. So our normal process is to make estrogen, then to make progesterone, which attaches to estrogen, pulls it out of the receptor, sends it to the liver detoxes it, sends it out in the bile and out the toilet. So that's our normal cycle, but a xenoestrogen gets stuck in the receptor, and so it can go on and on and on, continuing to kind of have this high estrogen response. And so avoiding our contact with those is really key. I work with women all the time in balancing their hormones, and I just have finally come to the point of like, if someone's not willing to intentionally, specifically avoid contact in our day, they're just not going to be able to balance their hormones naturally. Like, of course, you can start taking hormone supplements and try and do this whatever synthetic type of balance, but that's not real balance.
Mhm.
And you can't overcome that huge influence of xenoestrogen.
And can
So
you
those
like
are
lay it
present,
out a little bit, like what a picture of someone that's maybe like has an overload of xenoestrogens? What would
Okay, so this is a woman
what would
who,
that be like?
yeah, so monthly her period is horrible. She's going to have debilitating cramps. She's always having a day out of school or a day out of the office because, it's so bad. She is popping Tylenol and Advil all day long for probably several days. She has a headache. She gets migraines monthly. She has breast tenderness for maybe weeks because that's definitely an estrogen high symptom. And then when she's in her 30s or 40s, she's very likely to have her gallbladder removed because the gallbladder contracts and expands normally, contracts and expands. And if it has a lot of estrogen exposure, it can't contract and squeeze all of its bile out. So it's going to be full of bile and then build up stones. And then there's going to be, an emergency and she's going to have it taken. And she's probably going to have other digestive issues. She's not going to sleep well. Like she's kind of a mess, right? But of course, we're in our modern
Emotionally
day. We
too,
have
like
what was that?
all over the place, right? Like emotionally.
Yeah, emotionally, she's going to ride that roller coaster as well, and maybe think she's crazy. right? Maybe try psychiatric medication, or like there can be multiple medications just piled on her, and some of them themselves are adding to her estrogen burden. When she goes to her doctor to talk about the fact that her periods are horrible, she will be offered two options, birth control and birth control. That's what it will be, because
Mhm.
those are the tools that doctors have. So it'll be like this brand versus this brand, or like delivery system versus delivery system, but it will be synthetic outside hormones added into the melee that she's already got going on.
And
So
highly
unless she
dysregulate
finds,
copper.
what was that?
And they highly dysregulate your copper.
Right.
Yes. So over time, she'll have other things crop up like anemia or thyroid disease, or there's a whole long list, right?
It's
And
a
we're just,
downward cycle, like
yes,
spiral of, yeah, into worse and worse
Cascade.
health, honestly.
yeah. Until she finds a friend who says, hang on, you could start peeling back these layers, start removing estrogen exposure from your home, start, doing these things. And then suddenly you don't need quite as much Tylenol. Suddenly your liver's working a little better. Suddenly, and you can actually reverse. And the three of us have done that in different ways, right? When we had a friend tell us, hey, you can make changes, be a gatekeeper for your home. So, so this is what we want for our daughters, is to know this at the beginning, right?
Yes,
Here's how you,
avoid
yes.
all of the crud. You guys, I was just sharing with you before we hopped on that I had a cycle this month where there was literally no indication it was starting. I've had zero cramps. And I can think back to years of living in severe pain from menstrual cramps. But I had years of exposure of xenoestrogens. My diet was horrid. It was, high sugar, high processed foods, and I was feeling it. So yeah, if we can teach our daughters this now, how to nourish the body and how to avoid these xenoestrogens, they're going to be miles ahead of us
Mhm.
early
Yeah.
on, which is so
Yeah. So
beautiful.
let's talk about those xenoestrogens, like just real specifically, like where do they come from?
Are you taking
Well,
this question?
synthetics, there's there's a long list of them. Like if we went to, do we have a list? Do we have a complete list? Because it's like hundreds of chemicals long.
I don't know.
We
Let's
don't,
let's just
but
give people like a
let's
general idea when we say that,
general,
you know
yeah.
what we're talking
Okay.
about.
So things we need to really be kind of conscious of and begin swapping and avoiding. Plastics is a big one.
Okay.
So drinking out of plastic water bottles, or the worst is to microwave in plastic, because you're putting some food, which probably is fatty or, has some oils in it, and then you're heating the plastic and it's going into the food. And those plastic molecules are xenoestrogens. In fact, do you know the company Nalgene? It was like a water bottle company. I used to drink years
Yes.
ago.
Yep.
Well, and I don't know what grade of plastic they have now. I don't drink out of them anyway, just because it's plastic, but I don't want to throw them under the bus necessarily. They were used, they would do medical grade petri dishes, basically. So they would make petri dishes for labs. And there was this lab that was doing research on cancers that were estrogen receptive cancers. And so they were trying to like create these petri dishes where they would like grow the cancer in the dish and see how much estrogen they had to add, etc. Well, they started growing some and they had not even added the estrogen yet. And suddenly these cancers were like blowing up
Oh,
larger and larger. And they realized it's the petri dish itself that's making the cancer grow, these estrogen receptive cancers. So when I learned that, I was just like, okay, the whole plastic thing is confusing because there's different kinds of plastic. And I don't microwave in plastic at all. I try not to use styrofoam at all. And like, I won't accept a cup of coffee in a styrofoam cup. That's what I mean.
so the idea
And
too is we probably can't 100% avoid xenoestrogens, right?
yeah, right.
But
Because
but we
our
can
cheese is wrapped
drastically
in plastic.
reduce that exposure,
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
which
And
is
I think
good.
that's
You
the
don't.
goal of all of us, is to have awareness, be aware in your family of what are the biggest contributors, like
Mhm.
reading ingredients, just switching for better alternatives for things
Mhm.
like lotions and perfumes and
Yeah.
shampoos. And, we can do a lot in our
Mm.
house to cut down on those exposures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
We're never going to be
plastics,
100%
and
perfect.
we talked about this last time, things we put on our skin,
Mhm.
our, yeah, lotions, all these things do contain endocrine disruptors, xenoestrogens. And so those are some of the things that are the easiest way to kind of ditch and switch.
Well, they'll have potential to, right? Not all of them do. There's some companies that work really hard to make sure they don't.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
But
But
like your typical ones on the shelf, probably a
yes.
or
Yeah.
Walgreens or something like that. That's, you know,
Yeah, for sure.
we'll find them a lot.
Yeah, and anything that's called fragrance, we don't really know what's in there, but pretty much across the board, a fragrance will be a xenoestrogen. What's interesting is that essential oils, which are a natural fragrance, are often estrogen mimickers as well, but they're a phytoestrogen. So they actually go in and cleanse our estrogen receptors and then move out of our body within like 12 hours.
I think there's a lot of misconception. I've seen online people talking like, oh, avoid essential oils because they're estrogenic and blah, 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 without understanding the distinction between these phytoestrogens in essential oils that do not stay in the body, do not build up in the body, whereas xenoestrogens can get stored and yeah, cause so much havoc. So
Yeah.
Right. So so now that we know what they are, obviously it helps supporting the body with like trying to minimize or remove those as much as possible. But let's talk about support. So like far as diet, like what can we do most to support our daughters? Especially, I mean ourselves, but our daughters, since that's who we're talking about today.
So what, yeah, one of the first things that comes to mind is to teach our daughters about macro and micronutrients, like so specifically macronutrients and teaching them, okay, what are proteins and what are fats and what are carbs? And because I think so many of our kids live on carbs, right? And processed foods. And then they're having, blood sugar spikes and crashes and just everything's all over the place, which then is impacting their mood and how they're feeling and their energy levels and all of that. And it's making their livers work harder.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got the xenoestrogen exposure that's, the liver's trying to process and stuff too. But because of our diets, things kind of begin to get stuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can teach our kids to have a protein-rich diet, like
Mm-hmm.
from the time they're little on, I
Mm-hmm.
think that goes a long way on the diet front. And just to, I don't actually know how you guys have done this with your kids. We have not been the family that is like we completely avoid any sugar or bakery items and things like that. We really have taught the idea of moderation. What we bring into our home is whole foods. Every once in a while, there will be something in our house that's like a bakery item or ice cream or whatever, but it's kind of the exception. But also, like, we will go out and we will have a treat, right? Like, if there's a bakery and we're in the area and the kids want something, they'll get something. But the idea is that the vast majority of what we're teaching our kids to put in their bodies is whole foods, um, with a focus on making sure they're getting enough protein and fruits and veggies and things like that. I don't know. How about you guys?
Yeah, we're so similar. Like we want to teach that like the structure, your body is built by these good foods, right? But then we can enjoy treats now and then. We'll keep treats as treats. That's one of the things I think, right? Like a treat, if you have
Right.
it every day, it stops being a treat. And
Mhm.
then you're chased and all changes for it. And I totally agree about the protein. I mean, as moms, because we're mostly the ones that do shopping and planning for food and often cooking and preparing it too, it really is in our wheelhouse to make sure that there's protein going into our kids. And then the other thing that I focus on too is helping my kids begin to enjoy fruits and veggies. And fruits aren't as hard for them to enjoy, but when they're little, helping them learn to enjoy vegetables. And that started, when they're toddlers. When I'm cooking, I'll pull up a chair and have them like help me, like wash the carrots or okay, I'm sure this is not for everyone, but I have like tiny little dull knives that I would give my 3-year-old and have him like cut up carrots. And we never had anybody get cut. Do what you think is safe in your own home. But I loved having my little guy there and like, oh, look, we cut the carrots, we put them in the soup. And so their involvement, I think, gets them interested in it. But by the time adolescence is hitting, for our girls and they need to begin cycling that estrogen out, having those vegetable fibers in their gut literally is what the bile attaches to so the estrogen can leave and not just be reabsorbed from the gut back into the system. And so I've realized that although I can serve veggies every day to my kids, it doesn't necessarily mean they like them, right? And so my focus has been on trying to do things that are so yummy that they just are like, oh my goodness, cucumber tomato salad with parsley and, lemon. I love it because we're having it with gyros and they're not like, do I want my veggies? They're just like, oh, I love this meal. And so the more, yeah, I know. I remember when my oldest was like 12 and she and I went out one time. We went to some event and then we had to like stop and get some fast food and we went to Chipotle and we got bowls and she was sitting there and like just like sigh like every bite she ate she's like, oh, I love this, and she's eating all of her veggies in the bowl, right, with
So
chicken and
cute.
rice and whatever. And I was like, I think it's working. All this
So cute.
programming and giving good food. So the more we can make it delicious, then it helps them learn good habits for life.
Yeah.
The other food, just like food I would add into the equation for females specifically for helping get some of the excess estrogen and things like that out would be beans. And the
Mm.
best thing you can do with beans is eat them away from food actually and without fat. So
Tell me
that
more
really
about that. I haven't heard
yeah, so
that.
there's a whole thing called the Bean Protocol, and it's about so this the backstory is this mom she had her carpets like fumigated. I don't remember what the scenario was. So these chemicals were in their house, and her daughter was really young,
Wow.
and she was exposed to whatever they sprayed, and was basically going into like liver failure.
Mm.
And somehow this mom figured out that beans, specifically with how much fiber and the type of fiber they have in them, was able to help with the detoxification and really getting, because a lot of our bile will recirculate into our systems, but the beans would help to get more of that bile that had all of the toxins and stuff in it and move it out of the body. And so the most effective way to do it is beans, like kind of as like a snack, like away away from other foods, away from fats. And it really does help with getting more of that like used up bile like to flow out with the toxins in it. So
That's
it's kind of interesting. You
fascinating.
can research it.
Yeah, because I ran across that Ayurvedic protocol the other day that has lentils, and it's kind of like a 3-day protocol. And I'll have to see if there's fat in the recipes, but it's like a 3-day soup that you make that's supposed to kind of just like detoxify like that. And so I'm interested now to like I was
Yeah.
looking into it and I was like, this looks really fascinating to me. But it has also a lot of really, turmeric and a lot of these other spices that are very anti-inflammatory.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And
And
so
probably
it
stimulate
sounds
the
like it
liver.
may have similar functions. Yeah. So I'm just curious to look into it more.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, Becky, where we're going to go next, but I'm curious if we can talk about some support. So, like if they have mild symptoms, right? If our kids have mild symptoms as they're starting their periods,
Yeah.
cramps and
Like cramps and things.
yeah, things like that. What are some alternatives we can do? Like I know that I lived on ibuprofen because my cramps were so bad. So,
Yeah.
what are
So
some
my
other options?
girls, we use y'all, all of us use Young Living. I've always seen results with Joy essential oil. Have you guys used that
No,
for
tell me more.
cramping?
Yeah.
Um, Joy, it works for me, and it works for a good amount of people. Everybody's a little different, so a lot of people have to try different stuff until something works. But Joy on your abdomen is incredible.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
and
That's great.
it's worked for Baylor. So
I'm going to ask my girls about that because they love joy and they'll often do it around their cycle and they just say, I feel better. But I didn't ask them if it's helping them actually physically feel better.
cramping,
Oh.
yeah, it's like magical for cramping. I always think so. I tell customers that all the time. I'm like, try Joy. Like it's just
Oh,
always
that's
been
so
the
cool.
best.
That's good to know.
Um,
I know also in the essential oil world, peppermint has always been really helpful for me, just
oh
on my lower abdomen and back for
yeah, I
cramps.
mean, and occasionally like Dragon Time works for people, but Joy, I would say is number one go-to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've
Mm.
also had a lot of clients use Progestins Plus. So Progestins Plus is like a yam-derived progesterone, and people swear by just putting a few drops on their lower abdomen when they have cramps and it really helping with things, which I mean makes sense, right? We know that
I
cramps is more of a estrogen dominant state, but the progesterone seems to really help.
Yeah, I really like using Progestins Plus. That's my go-to. I don't have a lot of cramps, and probably because of avoiding xenoestrogens and all. But I will use Progestins Plus and feel like that's helpful. But I do want to just clarify that there are lots of yam creams out there, and yam creams are really not the same as bioidentical progesterone. So in Progestins Plus, they used yam as like the ingredient that they turned into bioidentical, but if you looked under a microscope, it would look the same as our human progesterone, which is why it works so well. Then it's micronized. It's basically like carried on the backs of essential oils, which are tiny, so it moves to the body quickly and really works really well. Um,
So helpful.
yeah,
I love
it's different
that.
also than, again, going back to kind of some of those xenoestrogens and chemical hormones, birth control and other hormones are oftentimes a progestin, which is also not bioidentical. That's like an isomer. So what can happen is you can have a molecule that looks like this, right? Like a left-handed or right-handed, and then you have another one that like is that, and they say they're the same thing. And so you can have like our human one, and then the one that's a hormone replacement looks like this. And they're like, they sort of match. They'll do the same job, but one
Those
gets,
who are listening, she's holding her hands up as if
oh,
they're like
yes,
mirror images of each other.
sorry, yes, right hand, left hand. And, what they'll both do the same job to a degree, but one will get stuck because it's not really built the same way. And so that's when, our synthetic progesterones, or like progestin, is that way. Where if you have bioidentical and it's exactly like our own, then it just stimulates our body to do what it should do, and then it leaves like it should leave. So I love Progestins Plus. It's definitely my go-to.
The other two things I think are huge for support, like if you know that your child is dealing with some cramps and just not feeling great right before, would be magnesium, either using like a magnesium lotion. I love the Ancient Minerals magnesium lotion. Um, or, taking some magnesium orally that second half of the cycle.
Or a
And
bath.
then what's that?
Or a bath works
Or a
really
bath, yeah, Epsom salt bath, magnesium flake bath, whatever, just to get that extra dose of magnesium is really because it's very soothing to the muscles
well.
for one thing, so it can kind of help relax the muscles, and then a good, B complex can also be really helpful
Mhm.
during that time. What else, Becky? Anything else?
I mean, even just something as simple as like a heating pad is
Yes.
actually really
Yes.
good. So, like our tissues start having problems when they're not getting enough heat and energy to the tissue. So, like something like a heating pad actually can assist the body when it's like maybe a little inefficient or not getting enough heat to the tissues. That's why something like, I mean, infrared light or saunas are also helpful because it gives more energy to the tissues. So like, yeah, even that heating pad is like really supportive for the body, even though it just feels good. It's supportive to like also help with energy.
We love rice. We call them rice socks. They're like rice bags. I don't know if you guys ever.
Hmm.
It's the main way we use the microwave at our house. We removed our microwave from the kitchen. I know we talked about microwaves in a previous episode, but we still have a microwave in our trailer. And so we'll take our rice socks out there and microwave them for a minute or two. And then those act like a heating pad that, I don't know, I love that. I love that way of doing it. Um, Feels good on the skin, on the
Yeah,
tissues.
that's great. Is there anything else y'all used to like? I mean, we use our oils like emotionally for emotional support. I
Yes, yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
stress away. What other? I mean, I always just like tree oils when I'm like feeling like I need grounding or like a little volatile or something. Like the tree oils are my go-tos.
Mhm.
Well, I'm just still cracking up about the joy because joy is a big one that I will use like during that time. But it's not something I'm ever like rubbing like on my abdomen.
Yeah, like if you
So
ever, maybe you'll never get cramps again after you had such a
I
great,
know, right?
but
Maybe I'm done forever.
but like if you do, or you know, your daughter does when she gets started, like just try it or recommend it to a customer. I'm telling
Okay,
you, it's like a total game
cool.
changer
Love
and
it.
it's amazing.
Can we talk about Okay, so for those of you whose daughters have not started yet, like mine, I'm waiting any day for this to happen. One, let's talk really quickly about products, like what to use, and also what might a little like period bag, like a little emergency kit for, not emergency, I don't want to call it emergency, but a little kit for our daughters as they get ready to start, what that might look like.
Yeah. So first, I think we want to remember that cotton does carry, a lot of pesticides. So when you're looking for feminine products, whether you're doing like, pads or tampons or whatever, we always want to buy organic because of that reason. Because especially in that very sensitive part of your body, and you're putting something there, and it like you don't want toxins are easily absorbed down there. It just so we just need to be really mindful. Like I feel like that's one thing I'm totally willing to pay extra for because we don't need extra stuff down there, right? So
Tell us
that's
your brands. What brands are your go-tos?
oh gosh, what brands are we using lately?
So I wrote down a few of the ones that we've done. So Cora,
Yeah.
they have organic, 100% organic cotton, free of pesticides, bleach, all of that kind of stuff. Um, Lola
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
another brand. This one I actually haven't done before, but I had this written down to, I think that they have it on Amazon. I don't know how you say it, but it's NatraCare, NatraCare,
Mm-hmm.
Natra. So it's just organic cotton. There's nothing else in it. So those are a few of
I've
them.
used those three. I've used a couple others as well, but I think mainly those three. The Nature Care one I used for years, but right now I feel like the Cora one, I just like the sizes and shapes and delivery of all that. So Cora is kind of the one we're using, but I've been happy with all of them. For me, it's actually about putting it on Amazon Prime and just making sure that it's coming every 2 months and we don't run out.
So
Because yeah.
I've moved recently to cups, like just in the last year, actually. Like I was always too scared to try them. But I finally tried it and I love it for my heaviest days. I don't really, for whatever reason, they start to kind of give me cramps, like when the flow isn't as much. But I've actually really loved that. And I know that they have like re smaller ones for like teens. So depending on like what you're doing in your family, with pads versus tampons and when your daughter's going to move, I feel like I moved to tampons pretty early after starting my cycle, just being in sports and stuff, it just felt much easier. Um, but I'm curious, like, when Bennett decides that she wants to go to tampons, like I'm curious for her to maybe try one of these like teen, like smaller little cups and see if she likes that. Becky,
Yeah.
what about you?
I have used cups before. It's been a while. I mean, for a while I really liked using them, and then they kind of I didn't like using them as much, so I haven't in a long time. But yeah, I think they're great. But I'm curious too. So making a period kit, what would you put in it if you're like brand new, for your girl before she starts? Or do you have one for Bennett?
So we have just a very basic one that has, pad it has pads in it. The little container that has pads in it and it has some like little like wet wipes or whatever, just like for, cleaning herself. That's really all that's in it right now. But I've seen some ideas and I'm like, oh, I want to add to it. And I want, like, I've told her since she, like really since we started reading that book and she was learning about, all of the things and all the changes that she was going to go through. I've told her that when she starts her period, that we're going to have like a fun like celebration day because it's kind of like her like, hey, I'm a woman type of thing. And so we're going to go out and like have a big celebration. So as I was like looking through what some people do for these period kits, I was like, oh, that's fun. I want to like put it together and then present it to her when she starts her cycle. So here were some of the things that other people were saying that they put in it. So obviously the pads, a pair of period underwear. So, that she could do that. A really like comfortable pair of like little boxer shorts or something that's really light and comfy that she could wear to bed if she's feeling like a little bloated or whatever and just wants, something comfortable. Um, what else? Magnesium lotion, throwing that in there, throwing a heating pad in, or like one of the like rice packs that you were talking about, Bronwyn. Um, what else? An extra pair of cotton underwear. Um, a notebook or a small journal, like just for journaling, like feelings and stuff like that. Um, Cozy socks and a little affirmation or encouragement note. So I thought that was cute.
That's cute. I think you need a little bottle of joy in there
A
now.
little, yeah, totally a little bottle of joy. Yes, after we learned all of that, Becky. Thanks for
Oh,
enlightening
you
us.
guys.
Maybe
I'm
a
surprised y'all
roller
didn't know
bottle,
that.
a roller popped on top of that, right? So she
Yeah.
can just,
Yes. Yes.
that's
Maybe a little chocolate bar,
yes.
a
Oh,
little
yeah.
dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate.
Super fun.
Yeah.
Oh, such good ideas today. I know, like, I hope this has been so helpful for everyone. If you think there's anything else that we need to share before we close up today.
I do have one thing I want to share.
Okay.
And that's as we talk to our girls about their bodies and just that they're beautifully, wonderfully made. This is the plan. Like, as women, we are the ones that carry on the human race, and it is our fertility that allows us to do that. What a gift.
What a
What
gift.
a gift it is to be a mom. And we can tell our daughter how much we love her and love being her mom in this conversation, right? That we hope that someday that she gets to be a mom. Not everybody does, but we hope so. I mean, I think we hope so, right? So we
Mhm.
just tell that. And then I love giving the analogy of the seasons when I'm talking to them about their cycle. So your period is like the winter of your month. And then after your period's over, it's like spring, new things are starting to grow. Then you get to summer, which is like your ovulation time. And that's when kind of the full abundance of your hormones are present. And then the longest time of our cycle is our luteal phase, which is like fall, where we are more pragmatic in our mentality and just kind of prepping up for winter. And so to give that analogy and then tell what our emotional states are during our seasons has been a really good tool in my home for communicating that with my daughters. And all the time we're just like, oh, I'm in my spring, I'm in my fall, and so it's actually kind of an easier way to explain where you're at and to relate to one another and then to normalize it. And it's just fun. So that's that's one tool that I think has actually been a really great tool for us.
I love that. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you all once again for joining us, and we will see you again next week. I think we plan to talk about birth control some
Birth
more.
control.
And so
Ooh.
we're going to piggyback off what we were talking about this week and talk about it again a little bit differently next week. So hope you all join us again. And thanks so much for being here. Bye.